Hi, good morning everybody, and welcome to our next workshop for the season. Today we are going through how to start your patch from scratch. Now, start your patch from scratch is a really essential workshop for anybody who's new to growing their own food in Port Hedland. I know when I first started out, my very first season, I grew up in country Victoria, where we always plant in spring. It's the rule. It's the rule everywhere. You know, pretty much the entire world, you plant your vegetables in spring. So my mum came over and it was September, the kids were out, we had these new garden beds, and off we went and we planted tomatoes, and can't remember what else. I just remember that we planted tomatoes. We did plant a few other things, but very quickly the garden failed. And failed miserably, and I'd lived in town for years, and my mum had gardened her whole life as well, and it just never sort of didn't really click that maybe we do things differently up here, because we all know we plant in spring. That's how gardening is done. And so yeah, it failed miserably. I did get some tomatoes off it, but they were bitter and they weren't really good, and pretty much everything else, just from memory, just bolted straight to seed. So that was, you know, an epic fail. So the next year I attended the Port Hedland Start Your Patch from Scratch workshop, and that's when I found out that, ding ding, we don't plant in September here, we plant in April. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go through everything you need to know to get you started to plant your vegetable garden in the next few weeks or month, depending on when the weather breaks. All the stuff we're going to go through today is fairly basic. It's not how to grow a community garden, it's about how to start your own patch in your own backyard. So it could be very small, and what I always say to people is don't come away from today's workshop thinking that your garden needs to look like the community garden or like your neighbour who's been gardening for a decade's yard. Gardening up here is not, you know, it's not easy. We certainly do face our challenges here. So walk away today thinking you're going to get started, but not that you're going to convert your entire backyard. If you want to convert your entire backyard this season, you know, it may become too overwhelming, and that's where we go, no, it's too hard, I can't do this. So start small. My first season after the epic fail, after I'd done Start Your Patch from Scratch, was I got the free tomato seedling from Port Hedland at Welcome to Hedland, and I started with a tomato in a pot on the deck. Failed at that too, but it sort of you know, got me started, and it sort of grew from there. So, and now, you know, the majority of my backyard is some kind of edible food, and then obviously I have the community garden as well. The first thing that you need to look at when you're starting a garden for the very first time is your water. It might sound a bit, oh duh, but if you don't think of water, your garden's not going to succeed. How are you going to water your garden? Do you have access to water in where your garden is? Are you going to use retic? Are you going to use a hose? Are you going to set up a sprinkler system? Are you going to use a watering can? Obviously retic is fantastic, but even myself, I only put retic on at home for the very first time last year. Up until then I had been hand watering, because doing retic was just too far above where I felt comfortable going. I now do have that comfort level, and I've set my own system up. You know, any retic specialist would probably be horrified, but it works for me, and I know how the entire system works, and it's easy to fix if something goes wrong. So start simple. I would not recommend starting something that needs to be watered by a watering can, because you know, if you're busy, you know, we all understand how life gets. Watering cans, in my opinion, is too much hard work. Start somewhere where the hose will at least reach. That way you can hook in a little one of those green sprinklers if you want, that we all used to play in when we were kids. That, you know, you can still purchase those. They're actually pretty cheap. I think between about $10 and $15 the last time I looked. And they're a really great way to have a bit of a sprinkler system if you want to do something really simple. Otherwise, just good old-fashioned hand watering with the hose. You can get some really good hose attachments now that will do that gentler watering, so that when you've got your seeds in, you're not bombarding it with a heavy spray. You can just give it that really light sprinkle. So yeah, water's your number one. And are you going to water it is the other thing too. It's all great to get it started, but are you going to keep up with the watering? And the way I got started was I got my kids on board. Excuse me. Yeah, I got my children on board, and I said to them, right, I need you to whinge at me. I need you to push me every morning and every afternoon to force me to go out there and get the watering done. Because in the previous years before that, yeah, I was fantastic at getting things planted and keeping them alive for the first week, and then I got over it, got busy, and then it fell over every single time. But once you get the kids involved and they're, Mum, 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 it's, you just, you know, you'll do anything to just stop them, you know, just stop. Okay, I'm up, out I come. Right, hopefully that's gonna hold today. You know, so get the kids on board. You know, growing, I'm so passionate about kids growing their own food, that, you know, if you can get them involved as early as possible, then you're starting them off on that really good train and that really good path to continuing that love of growing food, and then education as well about them actually knowing where their food comes from. I did forget to mention at the start this morning that this will be another interactive workshop. So lots of comments, lots of questions, and once the workshop's finished, I'll go through the comments thread and we'll award a couple of prizes after the workshop is finished. It'll be some plant packs, so it'll be some seedlings, some cuttings, whatever I've got available that's ready in the shade house at the moment. If you won last week, if you won at the last workshop, you can't win this time, but I would really love you to still get involved and ask lots of questions. I do have Baden behind the camera, and he will read out any questions that do pop up, because I can't see them. Okay, your next thing after your water is your sunlight. And I know at this time of year, when it's March, it's stinking hot, you think, no, my plants, surely they need to be in the shade. They don't. At the moment, if you were raising your seedlings from the last workshop, yes, they need to have a certain amount of shade. They do still need to have that little bit of sun as well. So if you're finding that those seedlings are a bit leggy now, or they've got that really long stem with the little leaves at the top, they've gone leggy, they're looking for the sun. So try and get them out with a little bit more access to the sun each day, and that will help them hopefully recover. Sunlight's really, really important. You know, we grow through our cool months of the year. We need lots of sunlight for most of our plants. Most plants will need at least 6 hours. Yes, babe?
Malvika Guja?
Yep, just first name's fine.
Malvika says, is afternoon in time a good time to water, or should we do in the evening?
I will get to that a little bit later on. So yeah, come once, you know, sort of come May, you know, we've got this beautiful weather. Your plants will survive. They do need that 6 hours at least of sun a day. If you've got spots that are only getting sort of 6 or less hours, you would put leafy greens and things in there, but you wouldn't put anything in there that needs to actually grow a fruit. So your tomatoes, your broccoli, your cucumbers, your zucchini, they will tolerate and do tolerate full sun throughout our winter months. So try not to position your garden bed based on what the conditions are right now. They do need that sunlight, and I promise you they will be fine. If you're going to get planting now, maybe you can get a little bit of shade cloth and put it over there to protect them. Even if you start planting in a couple of weeks' time when it's time, if you're not confident, you just get a bit of shade cloth, you know, pop it over your seeds or your seedlings. But once that weather breaks, it is absolutely fine, and you do need a lot of sunlight. Gardening, my philosophy on gardening is I don't believe in spending thousands of dollars to grow some free tomatoes. I personally, I like to recycle, I like to upcycle. Obviously the community garden's pretty stock standard, you know, it is fairly uniform, it's got the same garden beds throughout the majority of the garden. However, at home, if you've ever seen my backyard, it's a mishmash of all different types. I had bought a couple of beds, but they've rusted out and gone over the years. I use a lot of rocks. When we purchased our property, the person who we bought it from had used just insane amounts of rocks throughout for the landscaping. So over the years I've repurposed those and moved them, and so most of my garden beds are made of rocks. Old bricks that somebody was getting rid of, I took. Old garden beds that people were taking, I've grabbed those. You know, if you want to go out and spend the money, make sure that, you know, so that you've got all the same garden beds, you know, that's absolutely fine. But if you are on a budget, or you're a bit more conscious about repurposing and recycling, you know, things don't have to be, you know, your tomatoes don't know that you've used free rocks as opposed to a $150 garden bed. So I like to repurpose, and yeah, so my backyard, nothing is uniform, nothing is the same. So I've done it very, very cheap, and a lot of it has been completely free. There's quite often people getting rid of rocks, so you can pick those up for free. Old garden beds, I know when a garden bed has ended its life for me, because I want to go in a different direction, you know, I'll quite often just pop it out on the verge and advertise it, and that's perfectly fine for somebody else who's starting off. You can purchase new garden beds. I know Home Hardware do sell them if that's what you want, and they will do the nice big raised ones as well. So if you do have trouble bending down, those higher raised garden beds are perfect for what you need. Another way you can do it is that they don't have to go into a raised garden bed. You know, most of mine are raised, well, all of mine are raised, but some of them are only raised sort of, you know, not even a foot in some places. If you've got established gardens, you've got some palms in there, why not plant in between those? I know a friend of mine, she's popped her gardens inside established garden beds, so they've got the cottonwoods in them, and then she's planting underneath. Absolutely perfect. She hasn't had to go and spend a lot of money on garden beds because she's used what was already there, which in a rental, if you're in a rental property, is you know, quite handy because you can use what's there. If you want to do something in those garden beds, make sure you get the property owner's permission, because it is still their house, and obviously when you leave you do have to return it back to how you found it, unless you have an owner that's happy for you to leave it there because you've improved the property. But just be mindful in a rental property that that may be the case. A lot of people in town are in rental properties. There's been some really amazing gardens over the years here. Bathtubs are fantastic. You can usually pick up bathtubs for free or for fairly cheap, and they're fantastic for garden beds, especially in rental properties, because when you leave you can remove it and you can't tell it was ever there. So yeah, anybody who's renovating, if you can see a house that's being renovated, go and ask if they're getting rid of a bathtub, because they are really, really fantastic, and if they do get advertised, they usually get snapped up pretty quickly. Alright, so here's to your watering question, Malvika. Generally speaking, it's coffee o'clock and beer o'clock. So first thing in the morning, last thing in the afternoon. We're really, really lucky here that you know, we do have that heat, so that if we do water overnight time, you're not as susceptible to getting your powdery mildew and your diseases of things being wet, because things will still dry at night time. I personally, in theory, I like to water twice a day, but in practice I water once a day. My retic that I've got set up is still a manual switch on, so I quite often only do it once a day. You need to be consistent with your watering. That's one of the biggest things, and it sounds like something so simple, but inconsistent watering can cause a whole range of problems in your garden. So if you make the decision to water 2 times a day, make sure you water 2 times a day every day. If you make the decision to water once a day, make sure you do it that once a day. If you're only going to do it once a day, my personal preference is to do it in the morning. So we get up in the morning, and then we're up at around 6:30. The kids are, we're off at work and school by 8 o'clock. So it gets done between that 6:30 and 8 a.m. every morning. At the start of the season, I might do it that twice a day, but once things cool down and I can see things established, I will generally drop it back to once. But, it depends on the season really, if it's a warmer season. But yeah, so in the morning and late in the evening, or late in the afternoon. It's usually quite nice out there, sort of that 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You can go out there and get your watering done. There's lots of ways you can start your garden bed. Personally, for me, I promote a no-dig gardening. One, it's way easier. Obviously, it is exactly what it says, and it is no dig. So I have pretty much, since I went no dig, I have not turned my soil, I've not put a shovel in it, I have done none of that. And there's a lot of reasons for why. One, it's easier. You've got less work, and it's a lot less work. Two, you actually will eventually, not straight away, but you will eventually end up with less weeds. Because as your weed seeds are there and you build your soil up on top of it, they're getting further and further away from sunlight and less chance of germination. I still get weeds in my garden, but I have absolutely noticed a very huge decline in how many weeds I get in my garden beds since I've gone no dig. What also happens with no dig is when we leave our soil undisturbed, what we call is a mycorrhizal fungi will start to grow. And your mycorrhizal fungi is what they call the internet of the soil. And it helps communicate between your plants. It builds healthy soil. So if you do dig your soil, or if you go through your compost and you find all this white powdery stuff, this white stuff through it, looks like a fungus. It is a fungus, but it is good. It's very healthy. It's what you want. When you dig, you will actually kill it. So that's one of the other reasons why we don't dig. Yes, baby.
Martina asks, what's the best layering of a garden bed?
Yep, getting to that right
What's
now.
the basic layering?
Yep, so your basic layering is, is you want to do it like a lasagna. And so what you want to do is a brown ingredient and a green ingredient. So your browns are your carbons, and then your greens are your nitrogens. And it's the same way, so it's basically like doing a compost. If you've ever watched any of my composting videos, you will see how I build my compost with the brown and green layers. That is exactly how you do a no-dig garden bed. So what I would do is I would start off, so you can go straight onto the pinned end with this. You would start off with a nice thick layer of wet newspaper. So get your newspaper nice and wet and lay it down over your garden bed space, and that will help suppress the weeds from coming up through. It will not stop the couch grass forever, but it will help suppress it. If you can get some of that out before you put your layer down, then that's great. But it will not stop it, all of it, okay? But yeah, nice thick layer of newspaper. You can get old newspapers for free from the newsagents. You can collect them yourself, get your neighbours to drop theirs on your doorstep, whatever. But that's a free resource. Then you would put a layer of horse manure. So I like to, again, cheap or free is my biggest philosophy. Out at Shota, which is where the horse stables are, you can go and get horse manure for free. If you jump on Google Maps and Google up Shota Road, Shoata, Shota, that will give you directions to get to Shota Road. You go down about 2 kilometres, I think it is. On the right hand side, you will see a white sign that says Port Hedland Owners and Trainers Association, which is Shota, and that's where your horse stables are. You drive in there, make sure you stay under the 20 kilometre speed limit. Please don't take dogs. Please don't open any gates. What the horse stable owners will actually do is when they muck their stables out, they put all their horse manure into bays out on the roads. So if you drive through there, you will see piles of horse manure and quite often piles of hay out there as well. that is free to take. If we don't take it, they have to take it to the tip. So they actually really like us going out there to take it. So please go out there and utilise that free resource. Just be mindful and respectful that you are on private property, but we do have permission to be there. So yeah, I use horse manure. And so yeah, I'll do your newspaper, horse manure, a layer of hay, layer of horse manure, layer of hay. Make sure as you're layering those down, you give them a good wet, nice big sprinkle with the hose as you do each layer. Other things you can put in, you can do it like a compost. You can use, if you're going to do a deeper bed, you can start on the bottom with old tree branches. I've done some at the community garden where we've cut down a tree, and instead of taking it to the tip, I've put the branches on the very bottom of the bed. If you look up a type of gardening called, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, hugelkultur, that is where they will actually put the logs on the bottom of the garden bed. They take years and years to break down. And so what happens is, as they slowly break down, they act as a slow release fertilizer. So that's going to, over a very long period of time, improve your soil, and you've stopped putting something into landfill. So that'll also give you some nice bulk into the garden bed as well. Tree branches, grass clippings, veggie scraps, all that sort of stuff can be used in those layers. Now what I normally do, because if I'm going to build a garden bed like this, I generally want to plant into it straight away. So what I will do is I'll do my horse manure hay. Then when I get to the top layer, that's generally when I will use, if you're making compost, at the community garden I've got the compost, so I will then put that layer of compost on the top. It's nice and broken down. It's ready to be planted straight into. If you're going to go and purchase something, any of the nurseries and hardware stores in town sell plenty of different sorts of things, mushroom compost, cow manure, veggie garden stuff. Any of that is fine. If you need to buy it in bulk, you can go out to Down to Earth Nursery out at Redbank, and they sell the composted cow manure by the trailer load, and that's a really good one. You can put that straight on top and plant straight into that. One thing I will say is, please do not use potting mix. If you're going to grow in pots, then you use potting mix. Don't use garden soil for pots, and don't use potting mix for garden soil. It's really, really tempting to duck out to Woolies and spend that $3 a bag on potting mix. I understand that, and I know that obviously a lot of people are on a budget, but if you're going to use potting mix for things, please use the best quality stuff that your budget will allow. That $3 stuff, really, when you see a lot of complaints about fungus, gnats and things like that, it's usually come from a cheap bag of potting mix. Potting mix is one of those things where I will advocate for using the best one that you can afford, okay? And please don't top your garden beds with potting mix. It's not designed for it. The cow manure, the mushroom compost, all that sort of stuff is designed for that. And it's perfect. What I used to do when I was purchasing things like that is I would buy a mixture of the cow manure, the mushroom compost, the veggie garden mix, whatever was available at the shop at the time, and I would actually just mix them all in together and then spread it all out, so you had those mixture of nutrients. So that's how you would do your no-dig gardening bed with those layers. Give it a water. And all that hay and all that horse manure, instead of having it in your compost system to compost, is actually going to compost for you whilst your plants are growing. So what will happen is your roots will grow, they'll grow down into it, they'll create air pockets, it'll create all the microbes will come in, your mycorrhizal fungi will start to grow, and it'll break down. So your garden bed at the start of the season might be that deep. By the end of the season, it'll probably be that deep, because it's all broken down and it's composted, and it's now come down into that nicer soil. So then what you do is you leave it. So at the end of the season, I generally don't rip my plants out. I will usually just cut them off at the base, and then either give them to, I've got chickens, so usually the chickens get all of mine, but I leave my root systems in the ground, and that just leaves food for the microbes that are living in there, and they will eat all of that, and that then creates your air pockets and you've got your start of your no dig garden bed again for next season. I leave all my mulch on top, then leave it, and then when I'm ready to go again the next season, I don't dig it, I just layer on top again, and then it just goes from there. So yeah, over the seasons, no digging, less weeds, better soil health. And soil health is really, really crucial. The pindan that we have here it's nutritionally dead. It has almost nothing of any benefit in it. Your plants, your vegetables, your food that you're growing gets its nutrition from the soil. Okay, so if you've got poor soil, your fruit and veggies, they may grow, and every year I have people say to me, oh, I grow in pindan, it grows fine. It may grow fine, but if there's no nutrients in that soil for that plant to absorb, then you then can't eat those nutrients. So why would you go to all the effort of growing your own food for the extra health benefits to not actually get extra health benefits because you haven't improved your soil? Soil health is your number one. My philosophy on gardening is I don't grow plants, I grow soil, and I let the soil grow the plants. Might sound a bit corny, but it is absolutely true. The more beneficial your soil is, the healthier your plants are going to be, and that is why part of why your homegrown stuff tastes so much better than shop bought. Because you're putting so many more nutrients in. I only advocate for organic vegetable gardening. Yes.
Martina asks, what would be the best fertilizer to use?
Alright, so with your fertilizers, if you are starting out, you really can't go past your sea salt. It's organic, it's a seaweed liquid fertilizer. You can get it from any of the hardware stores, the nurseries, the supermarkets will sell it as well, and it's a really great place to start. I know Kelly Howlett uses all three of the sea salts. The sea salt brand sell three. They sell the standard, the bottle of sea salt, and they sell it, I think it's a red bottle of Power Feed and a green bottle of Power Feed. I know she uses those. I personally haven't used those before. I have used sea salt. As a startup gardener, sea salt is absolutely perfect. You can also use your slow release stuff as well. So when you're prepping your garden bed, you could mix in some blood and bone, some dynamic lifter. They're both organic, and they'll give your soil a really big boost. As you get more advanced, there's lots more things you can add in. I won't overwhelm them with you today. If you want to know more about those more specific things, please send me a private message and I can have a chat. But today is about the basics, and your basics, your sea salt will work absolutely fine. If you have a worm garden, a worm farm, then your worm leachate is really amazing for that as well. The other really, really important thing is your mulch. Obviously with our conditions here, it's hot, it's windy, it can really dry out your soil. Yes.
Tyrene asks, how often should you fertilize your veggie patch with sea salt?
Follow the directions on the pack. I think the standard sea salt, I believe, says fortnightly, but you can alternate that if you're going to use your power feeds. I think from memory what Kelly does is she fertilizes weekly, but she fertilizes with a different product each week over those 3 weeks. So that will give her garden slightly different nutrients. If you want to keep it nice and simple, get your sea salt and just follow the instructions on the bottle. It tells you exactly how to make it up and how often to feed. So your mulch is super important. With the wind that we get here, winter here is not exactly winter. We grow summer crops in our winter, so it is still warm. I cannot stress enough that you have to use a mulch. You can use shredded paper. I don't love shredded paper for mulch. I do find that it just mats together too much and can create a hard layer. If you could mix it up with some straw or some hay. If you're on a bit more of a budget, pea straw is amazing. That's generally what we use, is the pea straw. You can get it at any of the suppliers in town. And the brand that we usually get from Home Hardware, I believe, is organic as well. Another one on the market now is called Hooflung Dung, and I'm pretty sure that's a mulch. I haven't used it myself, but I have heard some really good things about it. But just go and have a look at your retailers. You know, they know what works here. They will have different products. You can get the hay that's out at Shoda. At home, I'll quite often use that. And what I really like about the hay from out at Shoda is it does have that horse manure through it as well. So it does give you that extra bit of nutrient. But it is really, really important. Once your seedlings have emerged, excuse me, if you're going to put your mulch down straight away when you plant seeds, I would leave a bit of a trench. So if you're going to plant your seeds, put your mulch down, but leave a bit of earth, leave the earth bare where your seed is going to emerge. And then once your seeds have emerged and you've got some seedlings, then you can just gently put your mulching down around it. I know I've seen people who, if you're planting seedlings, a really great way to do it is to get one of those like 15 centimetre pots and put those over the top of your seedlings, do your mulch all around it, and then you can just remove the pot and it won't have damaged your seedling. I thought that was quite a brilliant idea when I saw that. Yes.
Elma says horse manure needs blood and bone to break down.
Okay, cool. I haven't done that before, but I've started using a bit of blood and bone now. I know a lot of people do say that the horse manure becomes hydrophobic. I sort of find that I have that problem at the start of the season, but it sort of tends to slowly go away. But blood and bone is always a fantastic thing to add in to your garden anyway. If you can mind the smell. Just be mindful that if you are vegan and you're not wanting to use something like that, that obviously blood and bone just come from bones and blood from animals. I haven't explored vegan gardening though, so I don't have any knowledge on that. But I do know there are options that are vegan friendly on the market. Where was I at? Mulch. So yeah, mulch is super, super important. And again, get what you can, what the budget allows. I sort of tend to keep my mulch up throughout the season as well. And keeping that soil moist. You don't want your soil to dry out because that's when your plants will stress. Stressed plants will bring insects. Healthy plants are less likely to bring insects. You're never going to keep your insects away full stop, but you can certainly do a lot of things to minimize the risk of having pests come in and destroy your garden. One of those things is keeping your plants healthy. A stressed plant just cries out for insects to come and eat it. So yeah, that layer of mulch excuse me, will help keep your soil moist. It'll also help regulate the temperature of your soil so that you don't have those spikes, which can also stress your plant out as well. And obviously, if it's keeping your soil moist, you're using less water. Yes.
Martina says, so you would put mulch on top at the end or mix it?
So mulch and hay. So when you're doing your no-dig garden bed, you would get that. See if you can get your free hay out at Shoda. If you've got a friend who's at the pony club, anybody who's got, if you're friends with anybody on a station, see if you can get their old hay. That you would use in your no-dig. Once you've planted your plants, you do still need mulch again on top. So get them in and then mulch on top of the soil, and that will help protect your soil as well. Something that I am experimenting with now is living mulch. So, and a living mulch is a plant that will spread out. So for me, I'm going to use as a living mulch this year sweet potato. Probably use a bit of pumpkin and a bit of watermelon. The sweet potato really is a great living mulch though, because it grows all year round here and it's low lying. When you use pumpkins, those leaves get really large, whereas your sweet potato leaves are only small. And then obviously as it's growing along, it will grow, it will produce potatoes for you under the soil. So that's a really good one with, say, for example, with your sweet potato, as it's growing, those leaves on the bottom are dying and they're dropping off and they're breaking down into the soil. So whilst they're acting as a living mulch, they're also acting to increase your soil health by adding organic matter. So your sweet potato runners are very easy to get a hold of. Anybody who's got a sweet potato patch is always more than happy to just break off a piece of sweet potato runner for you. They're really easy to grow, and then you haven't had to buy your mulch. Obviously they will be a bit slower to take off than you just putting down mulch. Yes.
Elma says we have watermelon as living mulch.
Yep. Watermelon works really well as well. Elma, have you had any problems with when the moths come in and lay their eggs and kill off sections, or are you finding that that's not been a problem? Because I know when I grow my watermelon, you know, the moth will get in there and they'll lay their eggs everywhere, and it sort of tends to kill that part. So I guess that would then kill that part of your living mulch. Are you finding that that's been a problem for you? Excuse me. Yes, watermelon is still perfectly fine. My preference, my number one preference is the sweet potato, but any of those growing, spreading out things are absolutely fine. Yes.
Elma says yes twice, but it's grown back really well.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, especially over the winter months where you don't, you know, that obviously that sun's not going to be as harsh, that would be fine. It would have time to recover. So yeah, watermelon's a really great one as well. And watermelon also grows here all year round, and you get beautiful fruit off it too. So what to plant? If you walk away from this workshop today and go, you know, this is too much for me, I really don't know if I can do all this, then don't. Start off really simple, really small. Tomatoes and basil are your two easiest plants to grow up here. They thrive, they do really well, they pair really well together. And like I said, when I started, I had a tomato plant in a pot. Tomatoes, if you're in a rental property, tomato plants will grow really well in pots. I have friends that own their homes and they still grow their tomatoes in pots. You need a larger pot though, so sort of that 45 centimetre roughly. So a nice big pot, and you would only want to put one plant per pot. But if you grow something like a cherry tomato that's going to grow, you know, for a few metres anyway, it's going to produce a lot of fruit. So you only need those couple of pots. And yeah, I personally don't grow them in pots, but I have the space, so I don't grow anything in pots except my boab. But I am tempted to plant that out into the garden to see how big I can get it. Everything else for me is in garden beds, but if you're in a rental property and need to use pots, tomatoes grow fantastically in pots. If you're not sure about where to go to from here, chuck a tomato plant in a pot and put some basil in with it as well. They grow perfectly together, and basil as well. Basil grows all year round here. Once you get basil established into your garden bed, you will not kill it. Basil will pop up wherever it likes. If you've ever been to the community garden, you'll see that basil is just everywhere in all sorts of random places. I don't plant it anymore. Basil just comes up where basil wants to come up. But that's where you start today. If you're feeling like this is too much, is basil and tomatoes. But otherwise, the Growers Guide is on the Facebook group. I'll post it again today later. You can get a physical copy of it from me. Our Growers Guide that we have here is specific to Port Hedland. Please don't place too much stock in what the back of the packet of seeds says. Our growing conditions are so different. Like, you know, you get a packet of lettuce and it'll tell you that lettuce will grow here all year round. That's simply not true. Get your local Growers Guide from us. They're free. They've got a little magnet on it so you can stick it on the fridge, and that will tell you what to plant and when. You can grow almost anything here. There are a few things that I would recommend you don't grow: garlic, onions, and potatoes. So if you're like me and you've come from the East Coast, you know, that's kind of deep within your soul that you just want to grow garlic, onions, and potatoes. Potatoes will grow here, but not very well. Where I come from in Victoria is potato country. My mum and I did an experiment a few years ago where we planted potatoes at the same time, and I harvested about 2 kilos of potatoes. My mum harvested wheelbarrow loads full. So, you know, we put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money because I did the right thing and purchased seeded potatoes. And it's still, you know, they were very, very expensive potatoes, whereas Mum got her potatoes out of the cupboard, as we all used to do, chucked them in, and off she went, and she got heaps. Sweet potato grows here all year round really well, so we grow sweet potato instead of potato. Onions don't grow here. I've had the odd friend who's been able to grow. There's always the exception to the rule, but if you're starting out, follow the basics, and then expand from there. I experiment with new things every year just to push the limits and to see if there are new things we can grow here. But bunching onions, bulb onions generally don't grow very well here. However, spring onions grow fantastically here all year round. The best way to grow your spring onions is to wait until they're on special at the supermarket, buy a bunch, cut them off, use the green bit as you would, and then the bottom bit with the root system and the little bit of white, chuck that in the soil. Within a few days to a week, you will have spring onions ready to be harvested again. Once they're established, you can harvest those things every couple of days. Once you've got spring onions in, they're really good. I grew them from seed a few years ago. It took me a year to get them to be harvestable. I wouldn't recommend doing seeds of spring onions. Just go to the supermarket and buy yourself a bunch. Garlic just doesn't do well here. It'll grow like it's supposed to grow. It'll put off the shoots. It'll die off the way it's supposed to die off, and then when you pull it out, there's nothing there. I think somebody posted one last year or the year before that they'd grown one, and it was like the size of a 5-cent piece. Now that took them months and months, and if you like your garlic in your food, a 5-cent piece garlic's really not going to do a lot. So you can grow garlic chives, you can grow society garlic if you can find it anywhere. I grew it a couple of years ago. It grew absolutely beautifully. It had a really strong garlic flavour in the shoots. But my chickens also decided they really liked it too, and they ate it, and I haven't been able to find it since. Side note, if anybody can find a society garlic, please buy me one. I will happily reimburse you, or 2 or 3 or even 4. But other than that, so your tomatoes, your cucumbers, zucchinis grow insane here. You will have more zucchinis than what you know what to do with them. You know, I love to grow lots of zucchinis. I love to give them away as gifts. I love to sell them. Yes.
Tyrene asks, what will you be experimenting with this year on your veggie patch?
Ooh. Actually, one of the things I know I will be experimenting with is Balinese corn. I grow a Mexican sweet corn that grows really well up here. I have had some for sale, and I should have some more for sale when I get around to packaging it up again. But when I was in Perth last time, I found some Balinese sweet corn. So I'm going to give that a go this year and see how that works. Sweet corn's a really hard one because the majority of corn seeds that you would buy in Western Australia has been treated or is what they call an F1 variety. Now, an F1 variety has been bred specifically to produce the absolute perfect produce. What it's also been bred to do is not to produce good quality seed. So if you grow a good quality, you know, you'll grow this beautiful sweet corn from your packet, you'll keep the seed, you'll plant it next year, and it's just not quite as good. It's because it's come from an F1. So if you can find, with your seeds, look, there's nothing wrong with F1, it's bred to produce beautiful stuff. I personally do not use F1. I personally use open pollinated or heirloom seeds, because that means it's not been modified in any way, and it is, you can save your seeds, which is what you want to do, and that's something that we'll go through later in the season when it's time to start seed saving, is how to save your seeds. So if you grow the best tasting tomato, you want that best tasting tomato again next year. So if you're using an heirloom seed, you can save that seed. So yeah, I do. So yeah, the corn is something I'll be experimenting with. I have got a couple of different types of corn, to be honest. I think one was a blue corn, maybe a green, I can't remember. I have nearly 300 different varieties of seeds in my stash between home and the community garden. So I like to experiment with different types of tomatoes every year. I think this year I've got an orange one and maybe a white one. A couple of years ago we experimented with a black Russian cherry tomato. That is now right up the top of my list of favourite cherry tomatoes. We've saved those, and I've now got them growing in the shade house. I planted out a bed of those yesterday, so we should have lots of the black Russian cherry tomato this year. And that's how I find my favourites. So my personal favourites for tomatoes are the tomato, the black Russian, and probably the yellow pear. But this year I'm trying lots of different ones as well to see if I can knock some of those off or add to my repertoire. Yeah, so, and it depends on the season. Look, if any of you who know Val Middleton or followed his journey last year with his cauliflowers, he had tried for 3 years to grow cauliflowers with no success. Last year he grew the most amazing cauliflowers. I personally don't recommend growing cauliflowers here, but each year there is the exception to the rule, and last year it was Val, and his cauliflowers were sensational, but it took him a few years to grow those. The only thing we can think of that was different about last year, because he'd done everything else the same from his perspective, but any of you who remember last year, we had winter in June last year, which was early, and it was cold and it was wet, and it lasted for about a week, and that's the only thing we could sort of put it down to, was that earlier cold weather, which obviously we can't control that. So whether he tries again this year or not, I don't know. But yeah, certainly give things a go, but when you're starting out, try and stick to some of your basics. If you're going to grow corn, corn is really important to grow in a block and not a row. With the corn, to get them to pollinate, so the bit that comes off the top, that is your male pollen, and then the female pollen is actually the corn cob, so it's the hairs, the silks that come off, that's the female. And so if you've got them in a long row, when the wind knocks that down, there's not a huge chance for pollination. Each one of those silks correlates to one corn kernel. So you need all of those silks to be pollinated. So if you plant them in a block, you've got a better chance of the pollen falling onto those corn cobs. I personally, I don't grow a lot of your stock standard stuff. I don't grow things like your gross list tomatoes. I sort of figure if I wanted a gross list tomato, which I generally don't, I can go to the supermarket and buy that. So I like to try different things, different colours, different sizes, different shapes, different varieties. They'll each give you a different flavour. They'll do different things to your dish visually. They can have different nutrients in them because they'll correlate with the nutrients that are good for those colours of vegetables. And it's just variety. I'm all about lots of different varieties, so give them a go. You can grow, things like silver beet grow really well here, but so do the chards. So you can grow your standard silver beet, but you can also grow your tricoloured chard, your ruby chards, and it just gives you that different colour. Seedlings versus seeds, we did cover this a little bit in the workshop a couple of weeks ago. Budget will determine a lot on whether you're going to do seeds versus seedlings. To purchase seedlings from the shops can be a lot more expensive than buying the seed, but buying the seedling will give you a big head start. So if you were to go out, say, in 2 weeks' time and plant a tomato seed versus a tomato seedling, obviously that seedling is going to be weeks and weeks ahead of the seed. But budget does come down to it a lot with that. Availability also is a big one as well. Obviously, you can get a lot larger variety of seed than you can seedling. So then that's where you might want to go with seeds. In the past, I generally do the majority of my things straight from seed. This year, obviously, I have the shade house, So a lot of things I've already gotten started in the shade house. So in a few weeks' time, I will have lots of seedlings to plant. Now, not everything can or should be grown as a seedling. There are a lot of things that you really should plant direct into the ground. Your basic rule for that, your zucchinis, pumpkins, corn, any of your root crops, so your carrots, your beetroots, things like that, really need to be planted directly into the ground where they're going to stay. They don't like to be transplanted. And if you do that, like, it'll grow fine in your pot, but when you go to transplant it, the shock that it goes through when you transplant it into the ground can often counteract the time that you would have spent growing it from seed, planting it directly. So there are definitely some things that are best planted directly into your ground. So those things you will have to wait until it's time to plant them, to put them in. Things like tomatoes, capsicums, chilies, eggplants, your Asian greens, your lettuces, cabbages, broccolis, any of your brassicas, they can all be started now and grown as a seedling, or you can purchase those as seedlings when they get here in a few weeks' time. But there are definitely things that you should be done from seed first as well. So when you're planting, you really need to do it in the cooler part of the day, whether that be early in the morning or late in the afternoon. If you're out there in 2 weeks' time, you know, we're still likely to be in the mid to high 30s. Your beautiful little lettuce seedlings that are quite fragile are not going to be happy if you are planting them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So plant them first thing in the morning or late in the afternoon, and that will give them a bit more of a chance to get established. Now, if you are using seedlings, you must give them a fertilise when you plant them. Sea salt is perfect for this. So when you plant your seedlings, give them that sea salt drink, and that stops transplant shock. One of the most common things I get generally from new gardeners is they'll say, you know, Robin, I planted all these seedlings and 24 hours later, the entire garden bed was dead. And my first question was, did you give them a fertilise to stop them going into transplant shock? And every single time it's, oh, no, I did not. There's no point spending all that money or all that time on seedlings to not plant them right. Follow your planting guides to plant them. Send me a message if you're not sure. But the one hard and fast rule when you are planting seedlings is you must give them a drink. It's like, I like to call sea salt ice cream for plants. You know, they're happy, they're relaxed, you've just upset them, give them some ice cream, let them chill out. That's my sort of philosophy on it. So your sea salt will just stop that transplant shock, and will then, so I sea salt and then I will give them a bit of a water in as well, just to get that sea salt right down into all of those roots, and it will give your seedlings the best chance of starting to thrive. If you're going to plant seeds, the general rule of thumb with seeds to planting them is twice the width of the seed. So if you're not sure how deep to plant things, you would have a look at your seed size, and however wide it is, you would plant it twice as deep. So your big seeds like your zucchinis, you would sort of generally go down to sort of your knuckle on your thumb or a little bit deeper, stick it in, cover it up. Yes?
Rebecca asks, are fish-based liquid fertilizers okay, or is sea salt the best?
Fish-based, as in like your Charlie Carps and stuff, I believe it's just as good. I've used all sorts of things. I have an aquaponics system at home. So again, this goes back to using what you have available. Yeah, I have aquaponics system at home, so quite often when I'm planting, I will use my aquaponics water as the fertilizer to put them in, and I've never had a problem with that. Just make sure if you're using a store-bought thing that you follow the recommendations. It is so tempting to make them stronger, but these have been scientifically formulated for best performance. Follow the directions on the bottle. Yes.
Never mind, someone answered it in the comments.
So yeah, but I personally use my aquaponics water because it's what I have available. I wouldn't use things like your chickpea soup or anything like that unless you're going to make it really, really, really weak for that first time. But in general, any of the store-bought organic stuff is fine. So yeah, with your seeds, that's how you would plant them. Keep them protected. I've seen, and I've not tried it myself, but I've seen with carrots, a lot of people with carrots will plant their carrot seeds and actually put like a block of wood over the top of it because they swear by it for faster germination. So I'm going to try that one this year. Spacing is very controversial. If you watched Gardening Australia last night and you saw Tino on there, he's all about the space and doing correct spacings. Me, not so much. It depends on what it is. I like to sort of crowd things in a bit. When you're starting out though, absolutely read those spacings on there on your packets or on your punnets and give them the space that they need. But I also like to plant little things in between as well. So for example, I've done a YouTube video on this. It will be uploaded hopefully this afternoon or sometime next week, where I planted out my tomato seedlings into one of the garden beds. So what I've done is I've done my tomatoes and they were seedlings. I've also planted some rows of basil seedlings, but then I've gone and put in some marigold seeds. Marigolds grow really well with tomatoes. They help with the nematodes, which is a disease that can affect your soil. It's a little organism or fungi or whatever it is that will affect especially your tomatoes. But then what I've also done is I have planted a heap of Asian green seeds in between those spaces as well. The tomatoes are going to take months to grow. The Asian greens will grow super, super fast. So while I'm waiting for those tomatoes to grow up, I will be able to get a quick crop out of the Asian greens. So I've used my bed better. So I'm not the best person to take advice from on spacing because I don't follow those rules. But when you start out, I would recommend following your rules on your spacing. And then as you get more confident, you can decide. And look, lots of people will still use your proper spacings, and then lots of people won't. Find out what works for you. But certainly follow the rules to start with, and then figure out what you can break. Labels. I'm the world's worst person at this, but label things. Every year I promise myself I'm going to label things. Every year I don't do it. Every year I regret it. Especially if you're going to use lots of different varieties. So if you're only going to grow one variety of tomato, you'll know what your tomato plant looks like when it's up, and you'll know that it's that. If you're going to grow seedlings, grow your own seedlings, you need to label them because a lot of things look the same when they first pop up, and you don't want to risk planting the wrong thing in the wrong space. Labels are, anything from, you can purchase them. What I like to do is cut up old milk containers, old yogurt containers. They are that sort of stronger plastic, and they will, they'll weather the storm for a bit. They'll last out there in your weather, and then you just write on them what they are, and then you can reuse them over the years as well. Okay, pollination. This is a question we get asked a lot, and about the bees. We don't have the European honeybee here, and the European honeybee is is your number one in the food chain for pollinating. They are not the only pollinator. We do have native bees up here. Unless you know what you're looking for, though, you probably won't even notice if you have them. And a lot of our native bees are too small to pollinate some of the bigger things. They're okay on the small things, but not the big things. Ants are a huge double-edged sword. Ants can aid in pollination, and they actually do a pretty good job of pollination. But ants will also bring in aphids and mealybugs. So, you know, you sort of want the ants for pollination, but then you don't want them because they will bring in other pests. So with pollination, I recommend hand pollinating the things that need to be hand pollinated. Don't rely on the insects because you'll be very disappointed. In a month or so's time, when it is time to start having those things, or maybe 2 months' time, when we have some pollinating things, I'll actually do some videos on how to hand pollinate, and there are some videos in the announcement section of this group with the other videos already. Things that will need to be hand pollinated are your zucchinis, pumpkins, cucumbers, watermelons. Am I missing anything? Any of your melons? They'll all need to be hand pollinated. Another thing with pollination, corn. I like to hand pollinate my corn. Corn does not require hand pollination, but I like to pollinate it anyway, just to make sure that I get the best result possible. A lot of people will say, Robin, I've got my tomatoes, my eggplants, my chilies, my capsicum, they're all in fruit, but they're all flowering, but they're not fruiting. My first question is always, are they protected from the wind? And most people go, oh yes, they're nice and protected. You don't want them protected. Those vegetables that I mentioned, they pollinate. They're a self-pollinator, but they need the wind to do it. Same with the corn. So what happens is, if those things are in a protected area and they're not getting knocked around by that wind, when you can see the flowers, just on the top of the stem that's got the flowers on, just walk past every morning and give them a tap, and that will release that pollen, and that will aid in your pollination. But if you've got them in a windy spot, then it doesn't matter, they will do it themselves. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier with your watering, that consistent watering is key. I won't go through all the things that can go wrong with inconsistent watering, but one of your main things is that it will make your vegetables bitter. So if you pick your lettuce leaves and they're bitter, one, it could be that it's coming towards the end of the season and they've gone to seed. But if that's not the case, and you've just got these beautiful looking lettuce leaves there, and you eat them and they're bitter, it could be inconsistent watering. So make sure you set yourself up for, if you're going to do it once a day, do it once a day. If you're going to do it twice a day, make sure you do it twice a day. There are a whole range of other things that can be caused by inconsistent watering, but we'll leave it at that for now. We can go through that a bit later if you have those issues. Be cruel to be kind. You will come out at lunchtime and you will see that your lettuces all look really sad, your zucchini leaves are all wilted and dropped over. It's really tempting to give them a water. Don't. It's the heat that is making them a bit sad. It hasn't dried out your soil though. If you've watered them this morning, they will be fine. If you then, be brave, don't water them, go back out there at 5 o'clock this afternoon, they will be happy and they will have recovered and they'll be fine. Fertilizers, there's organic versus non-organic. I don't know anything about non-organic fertilizers. Personally, for me, I don't see the point in growing my own food if I'm going to chuck chemicals on them. I may as well just go to the supermarket. Everybody's different, but that is something I feel very strongly about. Organic stuff is, the fear is with organic that it's too expensive, and that's certainly part of why I grow my own food, because to buy organic vegetables is really expensive. I've never looked at the price of a chemical fertilizer, but I can certainly tell you that organic fertilizers are not out of reach. Sea salt is completely fine. Your blood and bone, your dynamic lifter. Your dynamic lifter looks expensive in the bag, but you don't use a lot of it, so a little bit does go a long way. So over the course of the season, it is a completely affordable product. I like to make all of my own for the majority. If you've got a worm farm, you use that worm leachate. I like to use chicken poo and make up my chicken poo soup. Another really great repurpose is to use weeds. So as you pull out your weeds, if you can get yourself an old rubbish bin or something that's got a lid, even those fishing buckets that you get from Kmart with a lid on them. Pull your weeds out, chuck them in your bucket, fill the bucket with water, let it ferment for a couple of weeks, and then you can use that water as a fertilizer. Your weeds are full of nitrogen, they're full of beneficial nutrients, so use them. Once they've been in that bucket for a month or so, they've killed any weed seeds that are in it, you can then compost that stuff and start all over again. That is a free resource, and unless you're using sprays and pesticides on your weeds, that's an organic fertilizer. Yeah, organic doesn't have to mean expensive when it comes to growing your own food. But yeah, if you're going to purchase a fertilizer, make sure you follow the instructions. I'm really terrible, I don't always follow them, but that's what they're there for. So, you know, while you're starting out, certainly use those instructions and guidelines that are on the packet. So where, you know, okay, we've got this far, I've still held your attention. Where do you get all this stuff from? Look, I know it's hard to get things here, but you can get everything you need here in town. A lot of things we can get for free. So like I said, you can get the horse manure for free. When they're getting rid of their hay, you can get that for free. Don't bother asking people that have chickens if you can have some chicken manure, because no, you can't. We use that all for our own garden beds. Shredded paper. If you are working anywhere that has an admin building, which most of us do, ask them for their shredded paper. If they are not shredding their paper, ask them why not. There is no reason that paper should be going to landfill. It can be recycled through your recycling system, but why not repurpose it and put it back into the earth here instead of it going somewhere else and being repurposed into more paper products? I've got a paper shredder. I think it cost me about $80 on eBay, and it's amazing. My newspapers go through it. We do a lot of shredding. We use our shredded paper in the chook pen, and we use it for our nesting beds, and then once it's broken down, it goes into a garden bed. I get a lot of shredded paper here from businesses around town, and it goes through the composting system, but it can be used to make garden beds, and it's free. So ask your office about their shredded paper, because it will reduce what they have to send to landfill, which is always a really good thing. Your horse manure is free, your hay is free, your shredded paper is free. Any of our nurseries, the hardware store, they stock lots of different types of different brands. I think, you know, Home Hardware, they sell the cow manure, the mushroom compost, hoof-lung dung, the pea straw. They'll sell veggie raising mix, they'll sell potting mix. I know if you go and see Janice at Hedland Garden Centre in Wedgefield, she sells pea straw